What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's transfer tips for Game Week 4. So I'm going to go through some of the popular players being moved in and out of people's teams and give my opinion on whether they are good moves or not. Obviously, we're still in the middle of an international break. There's still some games to come, like England are playing tonight, for example. So there is more information to gather over the next few days. We're waiting for a few injury updates and stuff like that as well. But I thought it'd be good to get back into the swing of things, talk about a few players, give my thoughts and stuff like that. Any updates we get over the next few days, I'll cover in other videos. Anyway, let's get into it. So let's start with Liverpool attackers, specifically Isak, Gakpo and Ekitike, because they've all got quite a few transfers in this week. Isak, for me, is an absolute ignore. Simple as that. I do not think he starts against Burnley away, and I don't think it's guaranteed that he starts against Everton at home in Game Week 5 either. Sweden had 2 World Cup qualifiers during the international break, so quite important matches. First game, they drew 2-2. He got no minutes. Second game, they're losing 2-0, and he only comes off the bench in the 81st minute. The fitness is not there. Slot is not going to start him when he's got Ekitike available. 10.4 million, you want more than that. So even if you're thinking long-term on a wild card, I would just have a different route to Isak later on. Just wait and see what happens over the next few weeks, and then see if you still really want him for Palace away in 6 or Chelsea away in 7. With Ekitike, in terms of bringing him in on wildcard or with a transfer, I wouldn't do that. But if you're on free hit, I would consider him. Because I think he will start against Burnley. He'll almost certainly get subbed early. Because even without Isak, in the 3 matches he's had so far, he's averaging 77 minutes per start. So he will get subbed early. Isak will get some minutes in this game. But he's going to play from the beginning. So if you're on free hit and you want to go for a 1-week punt, I quite like Ekitike. But as a long-term move, I just wouldn't bother bringing him in. Gakpo is the only one I would consider with a free transfer this week. I think right now, there is not that much competition for the left wing spot. And longer term, we might see a setup from slot which has both Ekitike and Isak starting. And perhaps Gakpo is relegated to the bench. But I don't see that happening very often. And I certainly don't see it happening immediately. I think it's going to take many weeks for that to be a thing. So Gakpo's minutes right now look really good. 89 minutes per start. That will probably come down once Champions League kicks in this week. But I think ultimately they will still be good enough to warrant that 7.7 million price tag. So if you are looking to bring in one of these 3 players this week on wildcard or with a transfer, Gakpo is the only one I would seriously consider. For me, Isak or Ekitike have got to be ignored unless you're on free hit, in which case I would consider Ekitike still. So we've got to talk about Florian Wirtz only for slightly different reasons, and that is that people are selling him rather than buying him like the other Liverpool attackers I just spoke about. I completely understand that no one wants to bring him in right now. 3 game weeks, 3 blanks. It has been frustrating. And if I was on wildcard, I probably wouldn't include him either. But to sell him with a free transfer makes very little sense to me. I know he's got no return so far, but would it be a complete shock if he walks away from game week 4 with 1 to 2 attacking returns? Not really. It's such a good fixture and he's such a good player. So I just wouldn't sell him this week. I'd much rather just roll the transfer. I can't think of many midfielders that are massively better than Florian Wirtz this week. If you went into game week 1 with Wirtz instead of Salah and you're sat there with like 5-6 million in the bank, then fair enough, I'd probably make that upgrade. But there's not really any other players I would move for. Like even Gakpo, you're not gaining a better fixture by moving to him. And if you're going for a different midfielder because you think long term they're a better pick, that might be the case, but it's probably not the case that they're better in game week 4. You can always make that transfer in game week 5 instead. And by game week 5, you might want to make a different move. So I think it's always difficult to justify selling an attacker before they play a match like Burnley away. And I don't think Wirtz is an exception here. I would absolutely keep him unless I'm on wildcard or potentially unless I'm free hit and I want to go somewhere else. If you're slowly starting to think about FPL again after the international break and you're not quite sure what moves to make for your team, don't forget you can get your AI suggested transfers over on Fantasy Football Hub. There is currently 50% off, and if you sign up and don't win your min league, you will get your money back. Terms and conditions do apply. All the links you need for that are in the description below. So I've got my team loaded in the app on my phone, but you can do this on the website as well. As you can see, I've got a few issues. So Strand Larsen's currently flagged, so is Sarr. But also in my defence, my third defender is basically playing Arsenal, Newcastle or Liverpool, and I've only got 1 free transfer. So I'm interested to see if it suggests taking a hit or not. So I'm going to click on AI transfers at the top and it will suggest a move for me. Surprise, surprise, a player we're going to talk about later, Semenyo, that's who's being recommended for me to buy. So Ismail Assar to be sold, Semenyo to come in, which would then allow me to bench Strand Larsen. So using this tool just gives you food for thought. It doesn't mean you have to make that move, but if you're unsure about what to do, you can use it as like a second opinion. So if you want to check it out and use all the other tools on the app, link in the description below, or scan that QR code on screen. So lots of people are selling Chris Wood this week. Now on the transfers in and out page on the FPL site, they don't differentiate for free hit transfers versus normal ones. So I suspect a lot of the transfers out are people on free hit, in which case it makes sense. He's playing Arsenal away. But there will be some people out there just thinking about selling him after that blank against West Ham. I think for those people, I would just keep hold of him. It's Burnley away in 5, Sunderland at home in 6. Now today, when I woke up, I saw the news that Nuno has been sacked from Forest and they're going to bring in another manager. At the time of recording, we don't know who that is. The front runner seems to be Ange Postecoglou. If that happens, we know the guy likes to attack, and it's unlikely that he would massively change the 11 straight away. So I don't think Chris Wood would come out of the team. He'll probably continue to get subbed early, but we already knew that was quite likely to happen. He doesn't often play 90 minutes. And if the attack does improve, that can only be a good thing for Chris Wood anyway. So ultimately with Forest players, I wouldn't panic too much over the Nuno sacking. Burnley away in 5 is still a good fixture. Sunderland at home in 6 is a great fixture as well. And after that, they were probably going to be sold anyway. So if you've got Chris Wood, yes, it's Arsenal, but you always knew that fixture was coming. Really, you're saving him for Burnley and Sunderland. And for that reason, if you've got him in your team, I'd much rather roll the transfer this week, because you'll be happy you've got him in game week 5. So one forward a lot of people are bringing in this week is Victor Gyökeres, just over 140,000 transfers in ahead of Forest at home. On free hit, I would probably include him. I spoke about that in my video last week. I'd probably include him on wildcard as well as a longer term pick, because you do have that fixture swing in game week 7 for Arsenal, which is West Ham at home, Fulham away, Palace at home, followed by Burnley away and Sunderland away. You probably will want one of their attackers. Why not have their penalty taker, whose minutes at number 9 also look really good right now? So longer term, I like him. As a regular transfer in, it feels okay this week, but it feels like you're making the transfer 3 weeks early. The time you really want him is game week 7. And again, on wildcard, it makes sense because you don't want to pre-plan lots of transfers in the weeks following your wildcard. But for everyone else, I just don't think there's necessarily a rush to get him this week. Even if you're sat there with Ollie Watkins, who you're frustrated with, and you've got a bit of money in the bank, I don't know if I would make that move. Like, Gyökeres is definitely better this week, Forest at home versus Everton away. But then in the next 3 game weeks after that, Watkins plays both Burnley and Sunderland. In fact, when that fixture swing happens for Arsenal in game week 7 against West Ham at home, Watkins plays Sunderland at home. So there's not even going to be a rush to make that move straight away. So I don't know. If you're sat there with a forward you're not happy with, or is injured or something like that, then fair enough if you can go up to Gyökeres. Like, I've got Strand Larsen, for example. I don't know if he's going to be back for game week 4. If I had tons of money in the bank, would I consider going to Gyökeres? Probably, but I wouldn't force that move. I think the time you really want him is game week 7. So it's not that he's a bad transfer in. I just wouldn't go out of my way to make the move this week unless you absolutely need to. So lots of people are continuing to buy Antoine Semenyo. Just over 500,000 transfers in ahead of game week 4. Only Jack Grealish for midfielders has more transfers in than that. I don't really have anything bad to say about Semenyo as a pick. Like, not that I'm always looking for bad things to say about players, but it is always nice to find a counterpoint to play devil's advocate just to give people something to think about. In this case, I just think he's a really good pick. The fixtures are decent. Brighton at home this week, followed by Newcastle at home, Leeds away, and Fulham at home. Brighton, Newcastle, and Fulham are not easy teams to play against, but all those fixtures are at home. We know the Bournemouth attack is strong. Leeds away is good. Then it's Palace away in 8 and Forest at home in 9. So 4 of the next 6 are at home. He always plays. He's always going to be in that 11. He often plays 90 minutes, if not close to that. He's got genuine goal threat as well. I think he scored 11 goals last season. He's just a good pick. It's not even a bad thing, I would say, but the only thing to consider is how much money he is, 7.4 million. Not that that's expensive, but does that impact your future moves? So, for example, I've got Sarr, who's currently injured. We don't yet know how long he's going to be out for, but I suspect he's going to miss at least 2 or 3 game weeks. I have the money in the bank to go to Semenyo, but that would use all my money and wouldn't leave me any cash to make further upgrades that I want to make over the next few weeks. So for that reason, for my own team, I'll probably ignore Semenyo. Not because he's a bad pick. It just means that I won't be able to make any other moves that I want to in the future. So I guess that's one thing to think about. but then you should be thinking about that for any player. Ultimately, 7.4 million, Semenyo is just a good pick. So Cole Palmer has nearly 800,000 transfers out this week, which makes sense because he's red flagged and a lot of people are on wildcard. And even if he was fully fit, I'm not sure I would include him on wildcard just because money is tight. I think the time you really want him back is Sunderland at home in game week 9. Not that he's a bad pick. If you are wildcarding and Maresca says he's fully fit, you could include him, but I don't think many people will. If you're sat there with him in your team and you're not wildcarding, you're not free hitting, I definitely wouldn't rush to sell him. Maresca on Friday might just tell us that he's fully fit and is available for Brentford away. All of a sudden, you've got a player at 22.9% ownership who is capable of getting a really big score in a fixture like that. Bearing in mind that Palmer was well over 50% owned at the start of the season, he's now somewhat of a differential. So I think for most people, it probably makes sense just to hold him. Brentford away is not a bad fixture. Then just decide what to do in game week 5. But if you're happy with the rest of your squad and you don't need the money, Palmer is still a really good long-term hold. The only thing I would say is, if we get to Friday and Maresca puts doubts on his minutes and you've rolled the transfer just to get more information after the international break and you're sat there with 2 or 3, I would definitely consider selling him. Because Brentford away is arguably the best fixture of the next 4, maybe even the next 5. And if he's going to miss that, go straight into Man United away in 5, Liverpool at home in 7. That's quite a lot of money to be carrying. So right now, if you've still got him after the break, I would just wait for the news from Maresca on Friday. If he's fully fit, keep him. If there's any doubts, I would still consider selling. Speaking of Chelsea attackers, a lot of people are buying João Pedro this week, which is completely understandable given how he started the season. He's the highest scoring attacker in FPL, only cost 7.7 million. And look, in pre-season, I was questioning his high ownership. Not that I thought he was a bad pick. I just didn't believe that he was so good that he should be over 50% owned. And right now I'm being proved wrong and he's 63.8% owned. And it does feel quite scary going against him. The key thing for me right now is his minutes are just great. Nicholas Jackson has gone on loan to Bayern Munich. Liam Delap is injured. We still don't know exactly how long he's going to be out for. The rumours were 6 to 8 weeks, but we're waiting for Chelsea and Maresca to tell us exactly how long he's out for. Either way, João Pedro is starting right now. Mark Guiu is not going to get a huge amount of minutes, in my opinion. I know Chelsea rate him highly. That's why when he went on loan to Sunderland, there was no option to buy. But I still don't believe Maresca's going to use him in that number 9 spot a lot of the times. I think it would just be João Pedro. And even if João Pedro doesn't start 9, he can play 10. We've seen that as well. So the fixtures are not bad. His minutes are good. He's playing in a decent team. Really good option to bring in. Unless you just want to go against high ownership. You want to go for a differential, in which case João Pedro is not the player to buy. Also, by the way, I don't think it's completely out of the question that if Palmer's not on the pitch at any point, that João Pedro takes the next penalty, even though Enzo took the one last week. But I don't think it's clear cut that Enzo's definitely second choice by an absolute mile. You know, like 1 or 2 seasons ago when Wilson and Isak were getting lots of minutes for Newcastle, Wilson was first choice. But if he wasn't on the pitch, 100% it would be Isak instead. I don't know if that's quite the same with Chelsea. I think there is a chance that if Palmer's off the pitch, that João Pedro takes the next one. It's not a reason to buy him. It's just another thing he's potentially got in his locker. His record's pretty good. But look, Enzo Fernandez scored, so maybe he just takes the next one instead. Even though if Palmer's on the pitch, we obviously know it's him. Anyway, I'm rambling about Chelsea players. João Pedro, unfortunately for me, looks like a good buy right now. Maybe even a better one than in pre-season. Let's talk about a cheap defender next. Wan-Bissaka down to 4.4 million. Didn't start the last game for West Ham. And interestingly, Graham Potter had them set up in a back 4. So it was Juve on the left and Kyle Walker-Peters on the right instead of Wan-Bissaka. Now, is that formation going to continue moving forward? It's hard to know. But given that they had a pretty bad start to the season, then he switched to a back 4 and they won 3-0, you'd think that might stay for at least the next game. Ultimately, whatever happens, Wan-Bissaka's place in that team is no longer secure. Now, it's not someone to panic about straight away. It's Spurs at home this week anyway. Was there a good chance of a clean sheet? Probably not. And for most people, he's probably not a defender that you're looking to play every week anyway. So if he's your 4th or 5th defender, you can just bench him for 1 or 2 weeks until you've got a spare transfer to deal with it or until you wildcard. But he is no longer someone that you can rely on, essentially. Even if in the next game he's starting, for game week 5, you're going to be thinking, is it Wan-Bissaka? Is it Kyle Walker-Peters? So I think long term, I would look to get rid. If you've got the money, I would go to a Crystal Palace defender, I think. Sunderland at home this week, West Ham away in game week 5. And they've got options across the board like Richards, Gay, Lacroix, Munoz, depending on how much money you've got to spend. But yeah, Wan-Bissaka is not the one. If you want a defender from West Ham, it's probably Juve. And it's a similar situation for Patrick Dorgu at Man United. He wasn't in the first 11 against Burnley at home in game week 3. The best fixture Man United had in the first 6 game weeks. So if you started with Dorgu, that is massively frustrating. Dalot was the player that started left wing back. We did see that in pre-season. I kind of wrote that off as Dorgu just getting a rest, but obviously I should have paid more attention to it. I think what's most interesting about it is I can see the argument for Dalot coming in for experience, but more so in a game like Man City away in game week 4 or Chelsea at home in game week 5. To play him in a game like Burnley just didn't necessarily make much sense, unless, of course, Amorim is not completely happy with Dorgu, which could be the case. So the problem you've now got is, even if Dorgu plays against City away or Chelsea at home, are you going to be confident when Sunderland at home in game week 7 rolls around? Probably not. So in the same way that I mentioned with Wan-Bissaka, Dorgu at that price is benchable, and you probably weren't expecting a clean sheet against City away or Chelsea at home anyway, so you can just wait and see what happens over the next couple of weeks and then make a decision. If he's still in your team by the time you get to game week 7 and he's mostly playing regularly, you could just risk it. But ultimately, again, when you've got a spare transfer and you're on wildcard, you're not going to include him because the risk is there. If you want a Man United defender, which I suspect most people don't, it's probably De Ligt right now. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button, check out Fantasy Football Hub using the links in the description below, and I'll be back tomorrow for the game week preview. It's good to be back.